Article 110 Requirements for Electrical Installations 110.1 Scope. This article covers general requirements for the examination and approval, installation and use, access to and spaces about electrical conductors and equipment, enclosures intended for personnel entry, and tunnel installations. Informational note: see informative Annex J for information regarding ADA accessibility design. 110.2 Approval. The conductors and equipment required or permitted by this code shall be acceptable only if approved. Informational note: see 90.7, Examination of Equipment for Safety, and 110.3, Examination, Identification, Installation, and Use of Equipment. See definitions of approved, identified, labeled, and listed. 110.3 Examination, Identification, Installation, Use, and listing product certification of equipment, examination, and judging equipment. Considerations such as the following shall be evaluated: 1. Suitability for installation and use, in conformity with the provisions of this code. Informational note: no. 2. Suitability of equipment use may be identified by a description marked on or provided with a product to identify the suitability of the product for a specific purpose, environment, or application. Special conditions of use or other limitations and other pertinent information may be marked on the equipment, included in the product instructions, or included in the appropriate listing and labeling information. Suitability of equipment may be evidenced by listing or labeling. 2. Mechanical strength and durability, including, for parts designed to enclose and protect other equipment, the adequacy of the protection thus provided. 3. Wire bending and connection space for electrical insulation. 5. Heating effects under normal conditions of use and also under abnormal conditions likely to rise in service. 6. Arcing effects. 7. Classification by type, size, voltage, current capacity, and specific use. 8. Other factors that contribute to the practical safeguarding of persons using or likely to come in contact with the equipment. Informational note: no. 1. Equipment may be new, reconditioned, refurbished, or remanufactured. 110.3 Article 1.1 or requirements for electrical installations. B. Installation and use. Listed or labeled equipment shall be installed and used in accordance with any instructions included in the listing or labeling. And C. Listing, product testing, evaluation, and listing product certification shall be performed by recognized qualified electrical testing laboratories and shall be in accordance with applicable product standards recognized as achieving equivalent and effective safety for equipment installed to comply with this code. Informational note: the Occupational Safety and Health Administration (OSHA) recognizes qualified electrical testing laboratories that perform evaluations, testing, and certification of certain products to ensure that they meet the requirements of both the construction and general industry OSHA electrical standards. If the listing product certification is done under a qualified electrical testing laboratory program, this listing mark signifies that the tested and certified product complies with the requirements of one or more appropriate product safety test standards. 110. For voltages. Throughout this code, the voltage considered shall be that at which the circuit operates. The voltage rating of electrical equipment shall not be less than the nominal voltage of a circuit to which it is connected. 110.5 Conductors. Conductors normally used to carry current shall be of copper or aluminum unless otherwise provided in this code. Where the conductor material is not specified, the sizes given in this code shall apply to copper conductors. Where other materials are used, the size shall be changed accordingly. Informational note: for copper-clad aluminum conductors, see 310.15, 110.6 Conductor sizes. Conductor sizes are expressed in American wire gauge AWG or in circular mills. 110.7 Wiring integrity. Completed wiring installations shall be free from short circuits, ground faults, or any connections to ground other than as required or permitted elsewhere in this code. 110.8 Wiring methods. Only wiring methods recognized as suitable are included in this code. The recognized methods of wiring shall be permitted to be installed in any type of building or occupancy, except as otherwise provided in this code. 110.9 Interrupting rating. Equipment intended to interrupt current at fault levels shall have an interrupting rating at nominal circuit voltage at least equal to the current that is available at the line terminals of the equipment. Equipment intended to interrupt current at other than fault levels shall have an interrupting rating at nominal circuit voltage at least equal to the current that must be interrupted. 110.10 Circuit impedance, short circuit current ratings, and other characteristics. The overcurrent protective devices, the total impedance, the equipment short circuit current ratings, and other characteristics of the circuit to be protected shall be selected and coordinated to permit the circuit protective devices used to clear a fault to do so without extensive damage to the electrical equipment of the circuit. This fault shall be assumed to be either between two or more of the circuit conductors or between any circuit conductor and the equipment grounding conductor as permitted in 250.118. Listed equipment applied in accordance with their listing shall be considered to meet the requirements of this section. 110.11 Deteriorating agents. Unless identified for use in the operating environment, no conductors or equipment shall be located in damp or wet locations where exposed to gases, fumes, vapors, liquids, or other agents that have a deteriorating effect on the conductors or equipment, or where exposed to excessive temperatures. Informational note no. 1. See 300.6 for protection against corrosion. Informational note no. 2. Some cleaning and lubricating compounds can cause severe deterioration of many plastic materials used for insulating and structural applications in equipment. Equipment not identified for outdoor use and equipment identified only for indoor use, such as dry locations, indoor use only, damp locations, or enclosure types 1, 2, 5, 12, 1 to K, and or 13, shall be protected against damage from the weather during construction. Informational note no. 3. See Table 110.28 for appropriate enclosure type designations. 110.1 To mechanical execution of work, electrical equipment shall be installed in a neat and workmanlike manner. Informational note: accepted industry practices are described in ANSI, NEC 12015. Standard for good workmanship in electrical construction, and other ANSI-approved installation standards. Unused openings. Unused openings, other than those intended for the operation of equipment, those intended for mounting purposes, or those permitted as part of the design for listed equipment, shall be closed to afford protection substantially equivalent to the wall of the equipment. Where metallic plugs or plates are used with non-metallic enclosures, they shall be recessed at least 6 mm 1/4 in from the outer surface of the enclosure. B. Integrity of electrical equipment and connections. Internal parts of electrical equipment, including busbars, wiring terminals, insulators, and other surfaces, shall not be damaged or contaminated by foreign materials such as paint, plaster cleaners, abrasives, or corrosive residues. There shall be no damaged parts that may adversely affect safe operation or mechanical strength of the equipment, such as parts that are broken, bent, cut, or deteriorated by corrosion, chemical action, or overheating. 110.13 Mounting and cooling of equipment. A mounting. Electrical equipment shall be firmly secured to the surface on which it is mounted. Wooden plugs driven into holes in masonry, concrete, plaster, or similar materials shall not be used. Informational note no. 4. Minimum flood provisions are provided in NFPA 5002-15 Building Construction and Safety Code, the International Building Code IBC, and the International Residential Code for 1 and 2 family dwellings IRC. B. Cooling. Electrical equipment that depends on the natural circulation of air and convection principles for cooling of exposed surfaces shall be installed so that room airflow over such surfaces is not prevented by walls or by adjacent installed equipment. For equipment designed for floor mounting, clearance between top surfaces and adjacent surfaces shall be provided with ventilating openings shall be installed so that walls or other obstructions do not prevent the free circulation of air through the equipment. 110.1 For electrical connections. Because of different characteristics of dissimilar metals, devices such as pressure terminal or pressure splicing connectors and soldering lugs shall be identified for the material of the conductor and shall be properly installed and used. Conductors of dissimilar metals shall not be intermixed in a terminal or splicing connector where physical contact occurs between dissimilar conductors such as copper and aluminum, copper and copper-clad aluminum, or aluminum and copper-clad aluminum, unless the device is identified for the purpose and conditions of use. Materials such as solder, fluxes, inhibitors, and compounds, where employed, shall be suitable for the use and shall be of a type that will not adversely affect the conductor's installation or equipment. Connectors and terminals for conductors more finely stranded than Class B and Class C stranding as shown in Chapter 9, Table 10, shall be identified for the specific conductor class or classes. Terminals. Connection of conductors to terminal parts shall ensure a thoroughly good connection without damaging the conductors and shall be made by means of pressure connectors including set screw type, solder lugs, or splices to flexible leads. Connection by means of wire binding screws or studs and nuts that have upturned lugs or the equivalent shall be permitted for 10 AWG or smaller conductors. Terminals for more than one conductor and terminals used to connect aluminum shall be so identified. Splices. Conductors shall be spliced or joined with splicing devices identified for the use or by brazing, welding, or soldering with a fusible metal or alloy. Soldered splices shall first be spliced or joined so as to be mechanically and electrically secure without solder and then be soldered. All splices and joints and the free ends of conductors shall be covered with an insulation equivalent to that of the conductors or with an identified insulating device. Wire connectors or splicing means installed on conductors for direct burial shall be listed for such use. See temperature limitations. The temperature rating associated with the ampacity of a conductor shall be selected and coordinated so as not to exceed the lowest temperature rating of any connected termination, conductor, or device. Conductors with temperature ratings higher than specified for terminations shall be permitted to be used for ampacity adjustment, correction, or both, as appropriately modified by 310.15b7. Termination provisions of equipment for circuits rated 100 amperes or less, or marked for 14 AWG through 1 AWG conductors, shall be used only for one of the following. 1 conductors rated 60 C1 for OF. 2 conductors with higher temperature ratings, provided the ampacity of such conductors is determined based on the 60 C1 for OF ampacity of the conductor size used. 3 conductors with higher temperature ratings if the equipment is listed and identified for use with such conductors. 4 for motors marked with design letters B, C, or D, conductors having an insulation rating of 75 C167F or higher shall be permitted to be used, provided the ampacity of such conductors does not exceed the 75 Celsius 167F ampacity. Termination provisions of equipment for circuits rated over 100 amperes, or marked for conductors larger than 1 AWG, shall be used only for one of the following. 1 conductors rated 75 C167F to conductors with higher temperature ratings, provided the ampacity of such conductors does not exceed the 75 Celsius 167F ampacity of the conductor size used, or up to their ampacity if the equipment is listed and identified for use with such conductors. To separate connector provisions. Separately installed pressure connectors shall be used with conductors at the ampacities not exceeding the ampacity at the listed and identified temperature rating of the connector. Informational note, with respect to 110.1 for C1 and C2. Equipment markings or listing information may additionally restrict the sizing and temperature ratings of connected conductors. ND installation, where a tightening torque is indicated as a numeric value on equipment or in installation instructions provided by the manufacturer. A calibrated torque tool shall be used to achieve the indicated torque value, unless the equipment manufacturer has provided installation instructions for an alternative method of achieving the required torque. 110.15 highlight marking. On a 4-wire, delta-connected system where the midpoint of one phase winding is grounded, only the conductor or busbar having the higher phase voltage to ground shall be durably and permanently marked by an outer finish that is orange in color or by other effective means. Such identification shall be placed at each point on the system where a connection is made if the grounded conductor is also present. 110.16 Arc Flash Hazard Warning. A general electrical equipment, such as switchboards, switchgear, panel boards, industrial control panels, meter socket enclosures, and motor control centers, that is in other than dwelling units, and is likely to require examination, adjustment, servicing, or maintenance while energized, shall be field or factory marked to warn qualified persons of potential electric arc flash hazards. The marking shall meet the requirements in 110.21b and shall be located so as to be clearly visible to qualified persons before examination, adjustment, servicing, or maintenance of the equipment. B. Service equipment. The determination of termination provisions of equipment shall be based on 110.1 for C1A or C1B. Unless the equipment is listed and marked otherwise, conductor impacities used in determining equipment termination provisions shall be based on Table 310.15b16 and contain the following information in other than dwelling units. In addition to the requirements in a permanent label shall be field or factory applied to service equipment rated 1200 amps or more. The label shall meet the requirements of 110.21b1 nominal system voltage. 2. Available fault current at the service overcurrent protective devices. 3. The clearing time of service overcurrent protective devices based on the available fault current at the service equipment for the date the label was applied. 1. The marking of the hazards using effective words. Informational note, NCZ 535.42 2011, product safety signs and labels. Provides guidelines for suitable font sizes, words, colors, symbols, and location requirements for labels. To the label shall be permanently affixed to the equipment or wiring method and shall not be handwritten. Exception to 2 portions of labels or markings that are variable, or that could be subject to changes, shall be permitted to be handwritten and shall be legible. 3. The label shall be of sufficient durability to withstand the environment involved. Informational note, NCZ 535.42 2011, product safety signs and labels, provides guidelines for the design and durability of safety signs and labels for application to electrical equipment. 110.22 Identification of disconnecting means. A general. Each disconnecting means shall be legibly marked to indicate its purpose unless located and arranged so the purpose is evident. The marking shall be of sufficient durability to withstand the environment involved. The engineered series combination systems. Equipment enclosures for circuit breakers or fuses applied in compliance with series combination rating selected under engineering supervision in accordance with 240.86 shall be legibly marked in the field as directed by the engineer to indicate the equipment has been applied with a series combination rating. The marking shall meet the requirements in 110.21b and shall be readily visible and state the following: caution, engineered series combination system rated _________ amperes. Identified replacement components required. See tested series combination systems. Equipment enclosures for circuit breakers or fuses applied in compliance with the series combination ratings marked on the equipment by the manufacturer in accordance with 240.86b shall be legibly marked in the field to indicate the equipment has been applied with a series combination rating. The marking shall meet the requirements in 110.21b and shall be readily visible and state the following: caution, series combination system rated ______ amperes. Identified replacement components required. 110.23 Current transformers and used current transformers associated with potentially energized circuits shall be short-circuited. 110.24 Available fault current. A field marking. Service equipment at other than dwelling units shall be legibly marked in the field with the maximum available fault current. The field marking S shall include the date the fault current calculation was performed and be of sufficient durability to withstand the environment involved. The calculation shall be documented and made available to 110.18 RSing parts. Parts of electrical equipment that in ordinary operation produce arcs, sparks, flames, or molten metal shall be enclosed or separated and isolated from all combustible material. Informational note: for hazardous classified locations, see Articles 500 through 517. For motors, see 430.14. 110.19 Light and power from railway conductors. Circuits for lighting and power shall not be connected to any system that contains trolley wires with a ground return. Exception: such circuit connections shall be permitted in car houses, power houses, or passenger and freight stations operated in connection with electric railways. 110.21 Marking. Equipment markings. 1. General: the manufacturer's name, trademark, or other descriptive marking by which the organization responsible for the product can be identified shall be placed on all electrical equipment. Other markings that indicate voltage, current, wattage, or other ratings shall be provided as specified elsewhere in this code. The marking or label shall be of sufficient durability to withstand the environment involved. And to reconditioned equipment shall be marked with the name, trademark, or other descriptive marking by which the organization responsible for reconditioning the electrical equipment can be identified. Along with the date of the reconditioned equipment shall be identified as reconditioned, and approval of the reconditioned equipment shall not be based solely on the equipment's original listing. Exception: in industrial occupancies, where conditions of maintenance and supervision ensure that only qualified persons service the equipment. The markings indicated in 110.21 shall not be required. Informational note: industry standards are available for application of reconditioned and refurbished equipment. Normal servicing of equipment that remains within a facility should not be considered reconditioning or refurbishing. B. Field-applied hazard markings. Where caution, warning, or danger signs or labels are required by this code, the labels shall meet the following requirements. Shall warn: informational note no. 2 in SIZ 535.4/2011, Product Safety Signs and Labels, provides guidelines for the design of safety signs and labels for application to products, colors, symbols, or any combination thereof. Exception: service equipment labeling shall not be required if an arc flash label is applied in accordance with acceptable industry practice. Informational note no. 1. NFPA 70-2015, Standard for Electrical Safety in the Workplace, provides guidance, such as determining severity of potential exposure, planning safe work practices, arc flash labeling, and selecting personal protective equipment. Informational note no. 3. Acceptable industry practices for equipment labeling are described in NFPA 70-2015 Standard for Electrical Safety in the Workplace. This standard provides specific criteria for developing arc flash labels for equipment that provides nominal system voltage, incident energy levels, arc flash boundaries, minimum required levels of personal protective equipment, and so forth. Equipment markings. 1. General: the manufacturer's name, trademark, or other descriptive marking by which the organization responsible for the product can be identified shall be placed on all electrical equipment. Other markings that indicate voltage, current, wattage, or other ratings shall be provided as specified elsewhere in this code. The marking or label shall be of sufficient durability to withstand the environment involved. And to reconditioned equipment shall be marked with the name, trademark, or other descriptive marking by which the organization responsible for reconditioning the electrical equipment can be identified. Along with the date of the reconditioned equipment shall be identified as reconditioned, and approval of the reconditioned equipment shall not be based solely on the equipment's original listing. Exception: in industrial occupancies, where conditions of maintenance and supervision ensure that only qualified persons service the equipment. The markings indicated in 110.21 shall not be required. Informational note: industry standards are available for application of reconditioned and refurbished equipment. Normal servicing of equipment that remains within a facility should not be considered reconditioning or refurbishing. B. Field-applied hazard markings. Where caution, warning, or danger signs or labels are required by this code, the labels shall meet the following requirements. 1. The marking of the hazards using effective words. Informational note, NCZ 535.4/2011, Product Safety Signs and Labels, provides guidelines for suitable font sizes, words, colors, symbols, and location requirements for labels. 2. The label shall be permanently affixed to the equipment or wiring method and shall not be handwritten. Exception to 2 portions of labels or markings that are variable, or that could be subject to changes, shall be permitted to be handwritten and shall be legible. 3. The label shall be of sufficient durability to withstand the environment involved. Informational note, NCZ 535.4/2011, Product Safety Signs and Labels, provides guidelines for the design and durability of safety signs and labels for application to electrical equipment. 110.22 Identification of disconnecting means. A general. Each disconnecting means shall be legibly marked to indicate its purpose unless located and arranged so the purpose is evident. The marking shall be of sufficient durability to withstand the environment involved. The engineered series combination systems. Equipment enclosures for circuit breakers or fuses applied in compliance with series combination rating selected under engineering supervision in accordance with 240.86 shall be legibly marked in the field as directed by the engineer to indicate the equipment has been applied with a series combination rating. The marking shall meet the requirements in 110.21b and shall be readily visible and state the following: caution, engineered series combination system rated _________ amperes. Identified replacement components required. See tested series combination systems. Equipment enclosures for circuit breakers or fuses applied in compliance with the series combination ratings marked on the equipment by the manufacturer in accordance with 240.86b shall be legibly marked in the field to indicate the equipment has been applied with a series combination rating. The marking shall meet the requirements in 110.21b and shall be readily visible and state the following: caution, series combination system rated ______ amperes. Identified replacement components required. 110.23 Current transformers and used current transformers associated with potentially energized circuits shall be short-circuited. 110.24 Available fault current. A field marking. Service equipment at other than dwelling units shall be legibly marked in the field with the maximum available fault current. The field marking S shall include the date the fault current calculation was performed and be of sufficient durability to withstand the environment involved. The calculation shall be documented and made available to those authorized to design, install, inspect, maintain, or operate the system. Informational note, the available fault current marking S addressed in 110.24 is related to required short-circuit current ratings of equipment. NFP is 70-2015. Standard for electrical safety in the workplace. Provides assistance in determining the severity of potential exposure, planning safe work practices, and selecting personal protective equipment. B. Modifications. When modifications to the electrical installation occur that affect the maximum available fault current at the service, the maximum available fault current shall be verified or recalculated as necessary to ensure the service equipment ratings are sufficient for the maximum available fault current at the line terminals of the equipment. The required field marking S in 110.24 shall be adjusted to reflect the new level of maximum available fault current. Exception: the field marking requirements in 110.24 and 110.24b shall not be required in industrial installations where conditions of maintenance and supervision ensure that only qualified personnel service the equipment. 110.25 Lockable disconnecting means. If a disconnecting means is required to be lockable open elsewhere in this code, it shall be capable of being locked in the open position. The provisions for locking shall remain in place with or without the lock installed. Exception: locking provisions for a cord and plug connection shall not be required to remain in place without the lock installed. Part 2. 1000 volts, nominal, or less 110.26 spaces about electrical equipment, access, and working space shall be provided and Maintained about all electrical equipment to permit ready and safe operation and maintenance of such equipment. A working space. Working space for equipment operating at 1000 volts, nominal, or less to ground and likely to require examination, adjustment, servicing, or maintenance while energized shall comply with the dimensions of 110.2601, A2, A3, and A4 or as required or permitted elsewhere in this code. 1. Depth of working space. The depth of the working space in the direction of live parts shall not be less than that specified in Table 110.2601 unless the requirements of 110.2601a, A1b, or 1c are met. Distances shall be measured from the exposed live parts or from the enclosure or opening if the live parts are enclosed. A. Dead front assemblies. Working space shall not be required in the back or sides of assemblies, such as dead front switchboards, switchgear, or motor control centers, where all connections and all renewable or adjustable parts, such as fuses or switches, are accessible from locations other than the back or sides. Where rear access is required to work on non-electrical parts on the back of enclosed equipment, a minimum horizontal working space of 762 mm 30 in shall be provided. Below voltage, by special permission, smaller working spaces shall be permitted where all exposed live parts operate at not greater than 30 volts RMS, 42 volts peak, or 60 volts DC. See existing buildings. In existing buildings where electrical equipment is being replaced, condition to working clearance shall be permitted between dead front switchboards, switchgear, panel boards, or motor control centers located across the L from each other where conditions of maintenance and supervision ensure that written procedures have been adopted to prohibit equipment on both sides of the L from being open at the same time. And qualified persons who are authorized will service the installation. 2. Width of working space. The width of the working space in front of the electrical equipment shall be the width of the equipment or 762 mm 30 in, whichever is greater. In all cases, the workspace shall permit at least a 90-degree opening of equipment doors or hinged panels. 3. Height of working space. The workspace shall be clear and extend from the grade, floor, or platform to a height of 2.0 meters 61 feet or the height of the equipment, whichever is greater. Within the height requirements of this section, other equipment that is associated with the electrical installation and is located above or below the electrical equipment shall be permitted to extend not more than 150 mm 6 in. Beyond the front of the electrical equipment. Exception no. 1. In existing dwelling units, service equipment or panel boards that do not exceed 200 amperes shall be permitted in spaces where the height of the working space is less than 2.0 meters 61 feet. Exception no. 2. Meters that are installed in meter sockets shall be permitted to extend beyond the other equipment. The meter socket shall be required to follow the rules of this section. And for limited access, where equipment operating at 1000 volts, nominal, or less to ground and likely to require examination, adjustment, servicing, or maintenance while energized is required by installation instructions or function to be located in a space with limited access, all of the following shall apply. Where equipment is installed above a lane ceiling, there shall be an opening not smaller than 559 mm. 559 mm 22 in, times 22 in. Or in a crawl space, there shall be an accessible opening not smaller than 559 mm 762 mm 22 in, times 30 in. B. The width of the working space shall be the width of the equipment enclosure or a minimum of 762 mm 30 in, whichever is greater. C. All enclosure doors or hinged panels shall be capable of opening a minimum of 90 degrees. D. The space in front of the enclosure shall comply with the depth requirements of Table 110.2601. The maximum height of the working space shall be the height necessary to install the equipment in the limited space. A horizontal ceiling structural member or access panel shall be permitted in this space. And 5. Separation from high-voltage equipment, where switches, cutouts, or other equipment operating at 1000 volts, nominal, or less are installed in a vault, room, or enclosure where there are exposed live parts or exposed wiring operating over 1000 volts. Nominal. The high-voltage equipment shall be effectively separated from the space occupied by the low. The OLTG equipment by a suitable partition, fence, or screen. B. Clear spaces. Working space required by this section shall not be used for storage. When normally enclosed live parts are exposed for inspection or servicing, the working space, if in a passageway or general open space, shall be suitably guarded. See entrance to and egress from working space. 1 minimum required. At least one entrance of sufficient area shall be provided to give access to and egress from working space about electrical equipment. 2 large equipment. For equipment rated 1200 amperes or more and over 1.8 meters 6 feet wide that contains overcurrent devices, switching devices, or control devices, there shall be one entrance to and egress from the required working space not less than 610 mm 24 in. Wide and to 0.0 meters 61 feet high at each end of the working space. A single entrance to and egress from the required working space shall be permitted where either of the conditions in 110.26c2a or c to b is met, and obstructed egress. Where the location permits a continuous and unobstructed way of egress travel, a single entrance to the working space shall be permitted. B. Extra working space. Where the depth of the working space is twice that required by 110.2601, a single entrance shall be permitted. It shall be located such that the distance from the equipment to the nearest edge of the entrance is not less than the minimum cleared distance specified in Table 110.2601 for equipment operating at that voltage and in that condition. 3 personnel doors. Where equipment rated 800A or more that contains overcurrent devices, switching devices, or control devices is installed, and there is a personnel door as intended for entrance to and egress from the working space less than 7.6 meters 25 feet from the nearest edge of the working space, the door S shall open in the direction of egress and be equipped with listed panic hardware. D. Illumination. Illumination shall be provided for all working spaces about service equipment, switchboards, switchgear, panel boards, or motor control centers installed indoors. Control by automatic means only shall not be permitted. Additional lighting outlets shall not be required where the workspace is illuminated by an adjacent light source or as permitted by 210.701, exception no. 1. For switched receptacles. A dedicated equipment space. All switchboards, switchgear, panel boards, and motor control centers shall be located in dedicated spaces and protected from damage. Exception, control equipment that by its very nature or because of other rules of the code must be adjacent to or within sight of its operating machinery shall be permitted in those locations. 1. Indoor. Indoor installations shall comply with 110.26c1a through 1d, a dedicated electrical space. The space equal to the width and depth of the equipment and extending from the floor to a height of 1.8 meters 6 feet above the equipment or to the structural ceiling, whichever is lower, shall be dedicated to the electrical installation. No piping, ducts, leak protection apparatus, or other equipment foreign to the electrical installation shall be located in this zone. Exception, suspended ceilings with removable panels shall be permitted within the 1.8 m6ft zone. B. Foreign systems. The area above the dedicated space required by 110.26c1a shall be permitted to contain foreign systems, provided protection is installed to avoid damage to the electrical equipment from condensation, leaks, or breaks in such foreign systems. C. Sprinkler protection. Sprinkler protection shall be permitted for the dedicated space where the piping complies with this section. D. Suspended ceilings. A dropped, suspended, or similar ceiling that does not add strength to the building structure shall not be considered a structural ceiling. 2. Outdoor. Outdoor installations shall comply with 110.26e2a through c. Installation requirements. Outdoor electrical equipment shall be BC dedicated equipment space. The space equal to the width and depth of the equipment, and extending from grade to a height of 1.8 meters 6 feet above the equipment, shall be dedicated to the electrical installation. No piping or other equipment foreign to the electrical installation shall be located in this zone. 110.27 Guarding of live parts. A live parts guarded against accidental contact by any of the following means: 1. To by location in a room, vault, or similar enclosure that is accessible only to qualified persons. By permanent, substantial partitions or screens arranged so that only qualified persons have access to the space within reach of the live parts. Any openings in such partitions or screens shall be sized and located so that persons are not likely to come into accidental contact with the live parts or to bring conducting objects into contact with them. By location on a balcony, gallery, or platform elevated and arranged so as to exclude unqualified persons. By elevation above the floor or other working surface as follows. A minimum of 2.5 meters 8 feet for 50 volts to 300 volts B. A minimum of 0.6 meters for 301 volts to 600 volts. Article 110 Requirements for electrical installations 110.31 F. Locked electrical equipment rooms or enclosures. Electrical equipment rooms or enclosures housing electrical apparatus that are controlled by a lock S shall be considered accessible to qualified persons. Part 3. Over 1000 volts, nominal. 110.30 General. Conductors and equipment used on circuits over 1000 volts, nominal, shall comply with Part 1 of this article and with 110.30 through 110.41, which supplement or modify Part 1. In no case shall the provisions of this part apply to equipment on the supply side of the service. Point 110.31 Enclosure for electrical installations. Electrical installations in a vault, room, or closet or in an area surrounded by a wall, screen, or fence, access to which is controlled by a lock-S or other approved means, shall be considered to be accessible to qualified persons only. The type of enclosure used in a given case shall be designed and constructed according to the nature and degree of the hazard as associated with the installation. For installations other than equipment as described in 110.31d, a wall, screen, or fence shall be used to enclose an outdoor electrical installation to deter access by persons who are not qualified. A fence shall not be less than 2.1 meters 7 feet in height or a combination of 1.8 meters 6 feet or more of fence fabric and a 300 millimeters 1 foot or more extension utilizing 3 or more strands of barbed wire, or equivalent. The distance from the fence to live parts shall be not less than given in Table 110.31. Informational note: see Article 450 for construction requirements for transformer vaults. Electrical vaults, where an electrical vault is required or specified for conductors and equipment 110.3101 to a 5 shall apply. 1. Walls and roof. The walls and roof shall be constructed of materials that have adequate structural strength for the conditions, with a minimum fire rating of 3 hours. For the purpose of this section, studs and wallboard construction shall not be permitted. To floors. The floors of vaults in contact with the earth shall be of concrete that is not less than 102 mm 4 in thick, but where the vault is constructed with a vacant space or other stories below it, the floor shall have adequate structural strength for the load imposed on it and a minimum fire resistance of 3 hours. 3 doors. Each doorway leading into a vault from the building interior shall be provided with a tight-fitting door that has a minimum fire rating of 3 hours. The authority having jurisdiction shall be permitted to require such a door for an exterior wall opening where conditions warrant. Exception to 1, 2, and 3, where the vault is protected with automatic sprinkler, water spray, carbon dioxide, or halon, construction with a 1-hour rating shall be permitted. For locks. Doors shall be equipped with locks, and doors shall be kept locked, with access allowed only to qualified persons. Personnel doors shall swing out and be equipped with panic bars, pressure plates, or other devices that are normally latched but that open under simple pressure. 5. Transformers. Where a transformer is installed in a vault as required by Article 450, the vault shall be constructed in accordance with the requirements of Part 3 of Article 450. Informational note: No. 1. For additional information, see ASTME 119-15, Method for Fire Tests of Building Construction and Materials, and NFPA 80216. Standard for fire doors and other opening protectives, except as elsewhere required or permitted. By this code, live parts of electrical equipment operating at 50 to 1000 volts, Nominal shall be guarded against accidental contact by approved enclosures or 4.3b prevent physical damage. In locations where electrical equipment is likely to be exposed to physical damage, enclosures or guards shall be so arranged and of such strength as to prevent such damage. See warning signs. Entrances to rooms and other guarded locations that contain exposed live parts shall be marked with conspicuous warning signs forbidding unqualified persons to enter. The marking shall meet the requirements in 110.21b. Informational note, for motors, see 430.232 and 430.233. For over 1000 volts, see 110.34. 110.28 enclosure types. Enclosures other than surrounding fences or walls covered in 110.31 of switchboards, switchgear, panel boards, industrial control panels, motor control centers, meter sockets, enclosed switches, transfer switches, power outlets, circuit breakers, adjustable speed drive systems, pull-out switches, portable power distribution equipment, termination boxes, general-purpose transformers, fire pump controllers, fire pump motors, and motor controllers, rated not over 1000 volts nominal and intended for such locations, shall be marked with an enclosure type number as shown in Table 110.28. Table 110.28 shall be used for selecting these enclosures for use in specific locations other than hazardous classified locations. The enclosures are not intended to protect against conditions such as condensation, icing, corrosion, or contamination that may occur within the enclosure or enter via the conduit or unsealed openings. 8 feet 6 in. Between and grounded conductors C. A minimum of 2.62 meters 8 feet 7 in. For 601 volts to 1000 volts between and grounded conductors. Informational note now. 2. At typical 3R construction is 150 mm 6 in. Thick reinforced concrete. B. Indoor installations. 1. In places accessible to unqualified persons. Indoor electrical installations that are accessible to unqualified persons shall be made with metal enclosed equipment. Switchgear, transformers, pull boxes, connection boxes, and other similar associated equipment shall be marked with appropriate caution signs. Openings in ventilated dry-type transformers or similar openings in other equipment shall be designed so that foreign objects inserted through these openings are deflected from energized parts. 2. In places accessible to qualified persons only. Indoor electrical installations considered accessible only to qualified persons in accordance with this section shall comply with 110.34, 110.36, and 490.24. Note: for clearances of conductors for specific system voltages and typical bill ratings, C&C IEEE 2012, National Electrical Safety Code. See outdoor installations. 1. In places accessible to unqualified persons. Outdoor electrical installations that are open to unqualified persons shall comply with Parts 1, 2, and 3 of Article 225. 2. In places accessible to qualified persons only. Outdoor electrical installations that have exposed live parts shall be accessible to qualified persons only in accordance with the first paragraph of this section and shall comply with 110.34, 110.36, and 490.24. D. Enclosed equipment accessible to unqualified persons. Ventilating or similar openings in equipment shall be designed such that foreign objects inserted through these openings are deflected from energized parts. Where exposed to physical damage from vehicular traffic, suitable guards shall be provided. Equipment located outdoors and accessible to unqualified persons shall be designed such that exposed nuts or bolts cannot be readily removed, permitting access to live parts. Where equipment is accessible to unqualified persons and the bottom of the enclosure is less than 2.5 meters 8 feet above the floor or grade level, the enclosure door or hinge cover shall be kept locked. Doors and covers of enclosures used solely as pull boxes, slice boxes, or junction boxes shall be locked, bolted, or screwed on. Underground box covers that weigh over 45.4 kilograms 100 pounds shall be considered as meeting this requirement. 110.3 to workspace about equipment. Sufficient space shall be provided and maintained about electrical equipment to permit ready and safe operation and maintenance of such equipment. Where energized parts are exposed, the minimum clear workspace shall be not less than 2.0 meters 61 feet high measured vertically from the floor or platform, or not less than 914 millimeters 3 feet wide measured parallel to the equipment. The depth shall be as required in 110.34. In all cases, the workspace shall permit at least a 90-degree opening of doors or hinged panels. 110.33 Entrance to enclosures and access to working space. Entrance. At least one entrance to enclosures for electrical installations as described in 110.31 not less than 610 mm 24 in. Wide and 2.0 meters 61 feet high shall be provided to give access to the working space about electrical equipment. One large equipment. On switchgear and control panels exceeding 1.8 meters 6 feet in width, there shall be one entrance at each end of the equipment. A single entrance to the required working space shall be permitted where either of the conditions in 110.3301A or 1B is met. An obstructed exit. Where the location permits a continuous and unobstructed way of exit travel, a single entrance to the working space shall be permitted. The extra working space. Where the depth of the working space is twice that required by 110.34, a single entrance shall be permitted. It shall be located so that the distance from the equipment to the nearest edge of the entrance is not less than the minimum clear distance specified in Table 110.34 for equipment operating at that voltage and in that condition. To guarding. Where bare energized parts at any voltage or insulated energized parts above 1000 volts, nominal, are located adjacent to such entrance, they shall be suitably guarded. 3 personnel doors. Where there is a personnel door as intended for entrance to and egress from the working space less than 7.6 meters 25 feet from the nearest edge of the working space, the door shall open in the direction of egress and be equipped with listed panic hardware. B. Access. Permanent ladders or stairways shall be provided to give safe access to the working space or on electrical equipment installed on platforms, balconies, or mezzanine floors or in attic or roof rooms or spaces. 110.3 for workspace and guarding. A working space. Except as elsewhere required or permitted in this code, equipment likely to require examination, adjustment, servicing, or maintenance while energized shall have clear working space in the direction of access to live parts of the electrical equipment and shall be not less than specified in Table 110.34. Distances shall be measured from the live parts, if such are exposed, or from the enclosure front or opening if such are enclosed. Exception: working space shall not be required in back of equipment such as switchgear or control assemblies where there are no renewable or adjustable parts such as fuses or switches on the back, and where all connections are accessible from locations other than the back. Where rear access is required to work on non-electrical parts on the back of enclosed equipment, a minimum working space of 762 mm 30 in. Horizontally shall be provided. B. Separation from low-voltage equipment, where switches, cutouts, or other equipment operating at 1000 volts, nominal, or less are installed in a vault, room, or enclosure where there are exposed live parts or exposed wiring operating at over 1000 volts. Nominal. The high-voltage equipment shall be effectively separated from the space occupied by the low-voltage equipment by a suitable partition, fence, or screen. Exception: switches or other equipment operating at 1000 volts, nominal, or less and serving only equipment within the high-voltage vault, room, or enclosure shall be permitted to be installed in the high-voltage vault, room, or enclosure without a partition, fence, or screen if accessible to qualified persons only. See locked rooms or enclosures, the entrance to all buildings, vaults, rooms, or enclosures containing exposed live parts or exposed conductors operating at over 1000 volts, nominal, shall be kept locked unless such entrances are under the observation of a qualified person at all times. Table 110.3 for a minimum depth of clear working space at electrical equipment. Condition 1 Expose live parts on one side of the working space and no live or grounded parts on the other side of the working space. Or expose live parts on both sides of the working space that are effectively guarded by insulating materials. Condition 2 Expose live parts on one side of the working space and grounded parts on the other side of the working space. Concrete, brick, or tile walls shall be considered as grounded. Condition 3 Expose live parts on both sides of the working space. 110.3 For Article 110, Requirements for Electrical Installations. Permanent and conspicuous danger signs shall be provided. The danger sign shall meet the requirements in 110.21b and shall read as follows: Danger high voltage keep OUTD illumination. Illumination shall be provided for all working spaces about electrical equipment. Control by automatic means only shall not be permitted. The lighting outlets shall be arranged so that persons changing lamps or making repairs on the lighting system are not endangered by live parts or other equipment. The points of control shall be located so that persons are not likely to come in contact with any live part or moving part of the equipment while turning on the lights. Elevation of unguarded live parts and guarded live parts above working space shall be maintained at elevations not less than required by Table 110.34a. Protection of service equipment, switchgear, and industrial control assemblies. Pipes or ducts far into the electrical installation and requiring periodic maintenance or whose malfunction would endanger the operation of the electrical system shall not be located in the vicinity of the service equipment, switchgear, or industrial control assemblies. Protection shall be provided where necessary to avoid damage from condensation leaks and breaks in such foreign systems. Piping and other facilities shall not be considered foreign if provided for fire protection of the electrical installation. 110.36 Circuit conductors. Circuit conductors shall be permitted to be installed in raceways, in cable trays, as metal-clad cable type MC, as bare wire, cable, and busbars, or as type MV cables or conductors as provided in 300.37, 300.39, 300.40, and 300.50. Bare live conductors shall comply with 490.24. Insulators, together with their mounting and conductor attachments, where used as supports for wires, single conductor cables, or busbars, shall be capable of safely withstanding the maximum magnetic forces that would prevail if two or more conductors of a circuit were subjected to short-circuit current. Exposed runs of insulated wires and cables that have a bare lead sheath or a braided outer covering shall be supported in a manner designed to prevent physical damage to the braid or sheath. Supports for lead-covered cables shall be designed to prevent electrolysis of the sheath. Identified. And 110.41 Inspections and tests, but pre-energization and operating tests, where required elsewhere in this code, the complete electrical system design, including settings for protectives, switching, and control circuits, shall be prepared in advance and made available on request to the authority having jurisdiction, and shall be tested when first installed on site. B. Test report. A test report covering the results of the tests required in 110.41 shall be available to the authority having jurisdiction prior to energization and made available to those authorities. And to install, operate, test, and maintain the system. Part 4. Tunnel installations over 1000 volts, nominal 110.51 general. Covered. The provisions of this part shall apply to the installation and use of high-voltage power distribution and utilization equipment that is portable, mobile, or both, such as substations, trailers, cars, mobile shovels, draglines, hoists, drills, dredges, compressors, pumps, conveyors, underground excavators, and the like. The other articles. The requirements of this part shall be additional to, or amendatory of, those prescribed in Articles 100 through 490 of this code. See protection against physical damage. Conductors and cables in tunnels shall be located above the tunnel floor and so placed or guarded to protect them from physical damage. 110.5 To overcurrent protection. Motor-operated equipment shall be protected from overcurrent in accordance with Parts 3, 4, and 5 of Article 430, transformers shall be protected from overcurrent in accordance with 450.3. 110.53 Conductors. High-voltage conductors in tunnels shall be installed in metal conduit or other metal raceway, type MC cable, or other approved multi-conductor cable. Multi-conductor portable cables shall be permitted to supply mobile equipment. 110.5 for bonding and equipment grounding conductors. A grounded and bonded. All non-current carrying metal parts of electrical equipment and all metal raceways and cable sheaths shall be solidly grounded and bonded to all metal pipes and rails at the portal and at intervals not exceeding 300 meters 1,000 feet throughout the tunnel. B. Equipment grounding conductors. An equipment grounding conductor shall be run with circuit conductors inside the metal raceway or inside the multi-conductor cable jacket. The equipment grounding conductor shall be permitted to be insulated or bare. 110.55 Transformers, switches, and electrical equipment. All transformers, switches, motor controllers, motors, rectifiers, and other equipment installed below ground shall be protected from physical damage by location or guarding. 110.56 Energized parts. Bare terminals of transformers, switches, motor controllers, and other equipment shall be enclosed to prevent accidental contact with energized parts. 110.40 Temperature limitations at terminations. Conductors shall be permitted to be terminated based on the 90 Celsius 194 F temperature rating and ampacity as given in Table 310.60 C67 through Table 310.60 C86, unless otherwise Table 110.3 for elevation of unguarded live parts above working space nominal voltage between phases elevation FT 10175 V to 0.77501 to 35,000 volts to 0.9 over 35 kilovolts at 9.5 mm per kV above 35 kilovolts 9 feet 6 in, at 0.37 in, per kV. 110.57 Ventilation system controls. Electrical controls for the ventilation system shall be arranged so that the airflow can be reversed. 110.58 Disconnecting means. A switch or circuit breaker that simultaneously opens all ungrounded conductors of the circuit shall be installed within sight of each transformer or motor location for disconnecting the transformer or motor. The switch or circuit breaker for a transformer shall have an ampere rating not less than the ampacity of the transformer supply conductors. The switch or circuit breaker for a motor shall comply with the applicable requirements of Article 430. 110.59 Enclosures. Enclosures for use in tunnels shall be drip-proof, weatherproof, or submersible as required by the environmental conditions. Switch or contactor enclosures shall not be used as junction boxes or as raceways for conductors. Feeding through or tapping off to other switches, unless the enclosures comply with 312.8. 110.73 Equipment workspace. Where electrical equipment with live parts that is likely to require examination, adjustment, servicing, or maintenance while energized is installed in a manhole, vault, or other enclosure designed for personnel access, the workspace and associated requirements in 110.26 shall be met for installations operating at 1,000 volts or less. Where the installation is over 1,000 volts, the workspace and associated requirements in 110.34 shall be met. A manhole access cover that weighs over 45.4 kilograms 100 pounds shall be considered as meeting the requirements of 110.3 for C. 110.7 for conductor installation. Conductors installed in manholes and other enclosures intended for personnel entry shall be cabled, racked up, or arranged in an approved manner that provides ready and safe access for persons to enter for. Installation and maintenance. The installation shall comply with 110.7 for or 110.7 for B. As applicable. A 1,000 volts, nominal, or less, wire bending space for conductors operating at 1,000 volts or less shall be provided in accordance with the requirements of 314.28. B over 1,000 volts, nominal. Conductors operating at over 1,000 volts shall be provided with bending space in accordance with 314.71 A and B, as applicable. Exception, where 314.71b applies, each row or column of ducts on one wall of the enclosure shall be calculated individually, and the single row or column that provides the maximum distance shall be used. 110.75 Access to manholes. Dimensions. Rectangular access openings shall not be less than 650 mm 550 mm 26 in times 22 in. Round access openings in a manhole shall be not less than 650 mm 26 in diameter. Exception, a manhole that has a fixed ladder that does not obstruct the opening or that contains only one or more of the following shall be permitted to reduce the minimum cover diameter to 600 mm. To feet, 1 optical fiber cables as covered in Article 770 to power limited fire alarm circuits. Supplied in accordance with 760.1 to 13 Class 2 or Class 3 remote control. And signaling circuits, or both, supplied in accordance with 725.1 to 1b. Obstructions. Manhole openings shall be free of protrusions that could injure personnel or prevent ready egress. See location. Manhole openings for personnel shall be located where they are not directly above electrical equipment or conductors in the enclosure, where this is not practicable. Either a protective barrier or a fixed ladder shall be provided. D. Covers. Covers shall be over 45 kilograms 100 pounds or otherwise designed to require the use of tools to open. They shall be designed or restrained so they cannot fall into the manhole or protrude sufficiently to contact electrical conductors or equipment within the manhole. E. Marking. Manhole covers shall have an identifying mark or logo that prominently indicates their function, such as electric. 110.76 Access to vaults and tunnels. A location. Access openings for personnel shall be located where they are not directly above electrical equipment or 70-53 Part V manholes and other electrical enclosures intended for personnel in RI. 110.70 General. Electrical enclosures intended for personnel entry and specifically fabricated for this purpose shall be of sufficient size to provide safe workspace about electrical equipment with live parts that is likely to require examination, adjustment, servicing, or maintenance while energized. Such enclosures shall have sufficient size to permit ready installation or withdrawal of the conductors employed without damage to the conductors or to their insulation. They shall comply with the provisions of this part. Exception, where electrical enclosures covered by Part V of this article are part of an industrial wiring system operating under conditions of maintenance and supervision that ensure that only qualified persons monitor and supervise the system. They shall be permitted to be designed and installed in accordance with appropriate engineering practice. If required by the authority having jurisdiction, design documentation shall be provided. 110.71 Strength. Manholes, vaults, and their means of access shall be designed under qualified engineering supervision and shall withstand all loads likely to be imposed on the structures. Informational note, CNCC 2207, National Electrical Safety Code. For additional information on the loading that can be expected to bear on underground enclosures. 110.7 To cabling workspace. A clear workspace not less than 900 mm 3 feet wide shall be provided where cables are located on both sides, and not less than 750 mm 21 feet where cables are only on one side. The vertical headroom shall be not less than 1.8 meters 6 feet unless the opening is within 300 mm 1 foot, measured horizontally, of the adjacent interior side wall of the enclosure. Exception, a manhole containing only one or more of the following shall be permitted to have one of the horizontal workspace dimensions reduced to 600 mm to feet, where the other horizontal clear workspace is increased so the sum of the two dimensions is not less than 1.8 meters 6 feet. 1 optical fiber cables as covered in Article 770 to power limited fire alarm circuits supplied in accordance with 760.1 to 13 Class 2 or Class 3 remote control and signaling circuits, or both. Supplied in accordance with 725.1 to 1 conductors in the enclosure. Other openings shall be permitted over equipment to facilitate installation, maintenance, or replacement of equipment. B. Locks. In addition to compliance with the requirements of 110.34, if applicable, access openings for personnel shall be arranged such that a person on the inside can exit when the access door is locked from the outside, or in the case of normally locking by padlock, the locking arrangement shall be such that the padlock can be closed on the locking system to prevent locking from the outside. 110.77 Ventilation. Where manholes, tunnels, and vaults have communicating openings into enclosed areas used by the public, ventilation to open air shall be provided wherever practicable. 110.78 Guarding. Where conductors or equipment, or both, could be contacted by objects falling or being pushed through a ventilating grating, both conductors and live parts shall be protected in accordance with the requirements of 110.72 or 110.31b1, depending on the voltage. 110.79 Fixed ladders. Fixed ladders shall be corrosion resistant.